Tonight, the GTA getting hit with its biggest snowstorm yet, just a few days into spring.
At least a few rounds of salting, possibly a few rounds of plowing.
Winter's back.
City crews kicking into high gear to clear the messy roads. How much accumulation is expected, and will this be the last of it? Plus,
for them, it's a pet, but for us, it's danger.
Would a registry have made a difference in an attack type situation? I don't know.
City Council approves recommendations for how to deal with dangerous dogs, including creating a public registry. And
it was a reflection of years of pent-up emotion.
a group of landlords in the province is calling for changes to how the province handles evictions, saying they want automatic eviction for tenants who don't pay their rent. Kicking things off with a live look outside. After one of the mildest winters on record, Toronto is finally seeing a blast of snow just a few days into spring. Environment Canada says we could see up to 20 centimeters before it's all said and done. And now the snow has tapered off and conditions will continue to improve through the night. Colette has a full breakdown just ahead. First, though, Tyler Cheese has reaction to the unseasonable storm.
I'm more of a summer guy. Yeah, cold's nice and all, but in this city, there's not much you can do with the snow.
I didn't think that it would snow this lately in March because of the weather, which was like 2 weeks back, it was 18 degrees and all. So I thought snow is over.
The city says it's been following the forecast for days, allowing crews to gear up ahead of today's storm.
Part of that plan included starting last night, where we activated liquid brine application on various priority locations across the city. Prior to the last night's activation, we actually salted on Wednesday, so many of the roads already had a good head start.
Crews started salting major roadways again this morning and local roads this afternoon.
We anticipate that we'll likely be beginning our plowing operations after rush hour.
The city says it also has crews out to clear sidewalks and separated bike lanes. 4 warming centers will also be kept open throughout the storm.
And those warming centers really give the vulnerable population or those experiencing homelessness a safe indoor space that's warm, and it also has access to snacks, washroom facilities, and of course referrals to other services that these individuals might need or require.
Meanwhile, the TTC says it's suspended service at more than 50 bus stops in areas prone to weather-related disruptions. Riders are encouraged to check if their stop is in service before traveling this evening.
There's that old saying, spring comes in like a lion and goes out like a lamb. We're just having the reverse right now. It's all part and parcel of living here.
We always get a little snowstorm before the summer or spring, so good to have it, I guess.
Tyler Cheese, CBC News, Toronto.
Let's check in with Colette now for a closer look. And Colette, definitely not an easy commute for many today.
Yeah, that's right, Kelda. It has been quite the day and quite the evening, of course, as that snow has continued. Pretty nice stuff. I mean, for the kids anyway, going into the weekend. Lots of fluffy snow to play with. Now, we still have the snowfall warning that's in place, and it's been kind of, some areas have seen the heightened amounts, especially when we had the wind coming in off the lake. First, it was southeasterly, then easterly, then kind of at east-northeasterly. It shifted it around a bit, but it allowed some extra moisture. So there were areas where we've had that enhancement and your totals are higher, and then other areas where it's pretty low. So some in that 5 to 10 centimeters and others at that 10 plus to 15. Locally, there might be the odd spot with more than that, but we're really seeing the timeline of this is that it is beginning to wind down. Still through the Niagara region and eastern Ontario, it's a different story, but really winding down across the GTA, and then just some light flurries kind of left behind. And then by 4 a.m., even 5 a.m., it's all gone across the Golden Horseshoe, and then just left in eastern Ontario. It'll make haste there too. Now, it is taking a big winter storm into the Maritimes, where the snowfall totals are going to be incredible, especially through New Brunswick, as it gets some of that moisture coming up the eastern seaboard and all of that combining with the colder air. But for us, yes, it'll have a cooler feel because of the northerly breeze for tomorrow afternoon, but we will otherwise have some sunshine coming back at us. And I said that those snowfall totals all put put together kind of all over the map here. There are some areas with a little more than that because of the enhancement, but otherwise in that range. -6 tonight, and there we go, above freezing tomorrow. Kelda up to 3 degrees. When we come back, I'll show you exactly kind of what's left to come in terms of the snow as we move towards midnight.
All right, thanks so much, Colette. The man who murdered 2 Toronto women decades ago has been sentenced to life in prison with no chance of parole for at least 21 years. Joseph George Sutherland pleaded guilty last year to the sexual assault and murder of 45-year-old Susan Tice and 22-year-old Aaron Gilmore. Tonight, we heard from the victims' families for their reaction to the verdict.
I think that's the best outcome that we could have all hoped for, and I think we're really pleased.
I don't know that I ever gave up hope, but I think that, you know, it was a long road and a bit of a black hole, and we finally found some light in it to get here.
Tice and Gilmore were killed months apart in 1983. Their murders went unsolved for decades until advances in DNA technology led to Sutherland's arrest in Northern Ontario in 2022. A Toronto police officer took the stand for a second day in the trial of Umar Zamir, the man accused of killing her partner. As Zamir has pleaded not guilty to first-degree murder in the death of Detective Constable Jeffrey Northrup. Sergeant Lisa Forbes was with Northrup investigating a stabbing in a parkade under City Hall when he was killed. Now, she was cross-examined by the defense today. Patrick Swadden has more from court.
Sergeant Lisa Forbes back on the stand today under cross-examination with defense lawyer Nader Hassan suggesting that at multiple points she embellished her version of the events that happened on July 2nd, 2021. Umar Zamir is accused of intentionally running over her partner, Detective Constable Jeffrey Northrup. At stake in the trial, whether Zamir knew Forbes and Northrup were police officers when they approached his vehicle in a parkade under City Hall. Forbes says she and Northrup walked up to Zamir's vehicle, that her badge was visible, and she identified themselves as police. Both were wearing plain clothes at the time. Zamir's lawyer saying they rushed up and he thought he was being ambushed by criminals. Zamir was celebrating Canada Day earlier in the evening with his wife and 2-year-old child. At one point, they passed a shirtless man with blood on his shorts. That man would later be the subject of Northrup's and Forbes' investigation. The victim described his attacker as a brown man with a large beard. The investigation led Northrup and Forbes into the parkade, where Zamir and his family had just returned to their vehicle. Forbes testified she did not have any legal basis to arrest Zamir, but wanted to question him. Defense lawyers suggested during cross-examination that the officers had rushed Zamir's vehicle, banging on his windows when he got into it. During the interaction, Forbes said Northrup had braced for impact before he was struck by Zamir's vehicle, and that the vehicle struggled to get over her partner's body as Zamir tried to escape. The defense says Zamir was simply trying to get away when an unmarked police van pulled in front of his vehicle, adding that he did not know Northrup was in his path. The Crown is expected to call other officers who were present on July 2nd to testify next week. Patrick Swadden, CBC News, Toronto.
Investigators in the U.S. have released a preliminary report on a plane crash in Nashville earlier this month that killed 5 members of a GTA family. The small single-engine plane crashed near a regional airport in Nashville on March 4th. On board were 5 members of the Dotsenko family who resided in King Township. The National Transportation Safety Board says it is still trying to determine why the pilot, 43-year-old Victor Dotsenko, overflew the airport. And he radioed air traffic control to say his engine had shut down and that he was trying to land. Multiple witnesses said they heard the airplane as it passed overhead and that it sounded like it was having engine issues. The plane crashed adjacent to the highway not far from the airport. Officials say the aircraft still had fuel at the time. The plane took off from the Brampton-Caledon Airport earlier in the day on March 4th. Dotsenko, along with his wife and 3 children, were all killed. Well, the city has approved recommendations on how to deal with dangerous dogs. And most notably, it's looking to create a registry so that the public can easily access information on dogs that have attacked in the past. Anam Khan has more.
After a series of recent dog attacks, the city has approved a new plan on how it will deal with dangerous dogs, unanimously agreeing to creating and maintaining a dangerous dog registry.
I think it's a good idea.
It would include dogs who received a dangerous dog order by the city. The public registry will include the dog's name, breed and color, the ward it lives in, and the date of the dangerous act. Owners also are required to have a sign warning of a dangerous dog where it lives. The owners' names, however, will remain private.
A lot of people got dogs during the pandemic when they were home from work all the time, and they're no longer home from work. So that's creating a situation with dogs that perhaps they're just leaving them there.
Councillor Paula Fletcher introduced the motion after a resident was brutally attacked by a dog in her ward last summer, despite it being under a dangerous dog order. She says right now there are 3,000 dogs going on the registry for biting. 540 of them have bitten twice, resulting in a dangerous dog order. 15 of them involved in a case of severe mauling.
That doesn't sound like a lot, but if you're the victim of one of these attacks, it really is a life-altering, life-changing situation for you.
It has been for Anita Brown, who was brutally attacked on her face and arm last month while waiting for a bus in Etobicoke.
So this one here, they have it having 17 stitches, and those the one under my arm is healing, but it's not healed properly, the inside.
She says she's skeptical a registry would be enough to prevent attacks.
I can't walk anymore. I don't know how long I'm gonna be home.
This dog owner also worries a registry is not enough. She says her puppy was attacked in an off-leash dog park.
I think in that situation, would a registry have made a difference?
But other dog owners say it is at least something.
He hasn't been attacked, but I've seen other dogs being attacked, so it can be very scary, so I think it's necessary.
Council also approved $500,000 in next year's budget for a public education campaign on dangerous dog orders. A report on the registry's performance is expected to come out in the fall. Annam Khan, CBC News.
Welcome back. Police in Ontario and Quebec have arrested 31 auto theft suspects in an interprovincial operation dubbed Project Volcano. Police say many were also wanted for other offenses.
In many cases, they were wanted not only for auto theft, but also for many serious offenses, including possession of a loaded firearm, dangerous operation of a motor vehicle, and impaired driving.
Police say they're seeing a trend where thieves are offending in Ontario while residing in Quebec. Now, Ontario Provincial Police say that between 2021 and 2023, violent carjackings and home evasions have increased over 200%. A group of landlords is calling for action from the province to expedite the eviction process for tenants who don't pay their rent. They say current delays at the Landlord-Tenant Board are putting some small landlords under extreme financial pressure. But as Sarah McMillan reports, tenant advocates say the changes that the landlords are proposing could put tenants at greater risk of illegal evictions.
And we are going inside now.
When Zahid Mahmoud walked into the rental house he owns in Oshawa this month, he was shocked by what he found.
It smells all around here.
This mess left by former tenants who stopped paying rent last spring. A perhaps extreme example of what a group of landlords say is all too common. Landlords dealing with the consequences of a months-long process to evict tenants who stop paying their rent. Like Rajan Kanwar, who's owed thousands of dollars in unpaid rent for his property in Brampton.
The easiest way I can put that is hell. Try not making your mortgage payment to the bank for 1 month, 2 months, at most 3 months. You're no longer the rightful owner of that property anymore.
Christopher Seepy is behind a petition that's been racking up signatures in recent weeks, calling for changes to how Ontario handles evictions, making it easier and faster to evict tenants for non-payment of rent.
Then it should be automatic that we get our property back. And that resonated with all these people. The tone, the demand, the sense of frustration, the anger, the upset. And perhaps I would say the greatest sense of injustice is what's driven a lot of these people to sign that petition.
CP points to BC, where landlords can give tenants notice and then apply for an eviction without a hearing if the tenant does not pay up or dispute the notice within 5 days. But tenant advocates in that province say it's too easy for bad landlords to exploit those tight timeframes, sometimes making up arrears in order to evict tenants and jack up the rent.
I would say do not look to BC for a model on how to handle your eviction system.
As for potential financial losses due to a lengthy eviction process, this tenant advocate in Toronto says that's just a risk of business.
I have no sympathy for landlords right now in this rental market. I have no sympathy for investors that have to learn about investment risk, but I have a lot of sympathy for tenants.
CP argues speeding up evictions would improve the rental market for everyone.
I wouldn't even worry about bank statements or pay stubs or identification and so on. If I knew that the tenant could be gone in 30 to 60 days because of non-payment of rent, I believe that the great majority of housing providers would open up their doors.
We asked the Ministry of Housing if it's considering making any changes, but have not heard back. The Landlord and Tenant Board says it has made progress in addressing delays, with more than 70% of hearings for most application types scheduled within target timeframes from July to September last year. That's up from just 7% throughout the previous year. Sarah McMillan, CBC News, Toronto.
Let's go back to Colette now for a look at your extended forecast. And Colette, I think I speak for many people when I say, hopefully this is it when it comes to snowfall.
Yeah, Kelda, I sort of, was teasing from the earlier segment that I'd let you know what we have left to come with this storm. Of course, it tapered off earlier, mostly for southwestern Ontario, but we will take you through the timeline here around the Golden Horseshoe. We're seeing the heaviest stuff will be tapering off here as we go through the next hour or two. It's a little bit longer to get it to clear there through the Niagara region, so that's why I say hour or two. But that's sort of the heavier, more intense stuff, and then a little bit of light residual, but all of it moved well on by the time we get to about 4 a.m. and it'll be off into eastern Ontario there. So what does that mean? What's left behind? Well, for Saturday, it does mean we're going to get into some sunshine now. Some clouds will start to push back in with that and mixing with it, but at times you're going to see the sun and the temperature pushing above freezing for the daytime highs too. So they'll be on the rise. It's going to help a little bit with the areas where we have the higher snow totals in terms of that shoveling, and lots to play around in for the kids going into the weekend. So the outlook with that heavier stuff as we take you through the next hour or two, and this is what I mean by it kind of clearing here. This model's going a bit slower. I do think it's going to be out of even the Niagara region before that. It's just eastern Ontario tomorrow morning, and then this whole storm gets much bigger as it moves further to the east, and there'll be some incredible snowfall totals. What do I mean by that? More than 50 centimeters possible, perhaps well more than that in parts of New Brunswick. So think of our friends and family there. We get into that sunshine. What's left? So this is not what the full totals are, but just kind of what's left to come as the storm carries on over the next few hours here with some of the heavier stuff and then the lighter stuff through tomorrow afternoon. So in general, a few centimeters that we have to contend with, more than that into eastern Ontario. The winds tomorrow, not terribly strong, but they do pick up in the afternoon, and they'll have a northerly to northwesterly component. So even though we get above freezing, it is going to feel a little cool with that wind chill, and it certainly will in the morning hours when it's -6. The wind chill, it's going to be closer to -10, but there it is, 3 degrees for that daytime high on Saturday. Will you take some sun on Sunday too? Well, we've got it, 1 degree, and then look at the trend into next week. It will maybe, perhaps, feel a bit more like spring, because we'll not only have some milder temperatures even above seasonal, but some spring showers as well, Kelda.
All right, thanks so much, Colette. And before we go, we want to introduce you to an Ontario man with a unique and pretty cool job. Nick Angel is a self-proclaimed pinball addict with 60 arcade games in his basement. And through the help of the internet, he now makes a living repairing them for others. We visited him in his Georgetown home.
Everybody's always amazed. I guess most people haven't seen a big room full of working pinball machines and fun electronic stuff. Hi, my name is Nick Angel. I am a pinball addict. Alexa, turn on all games. When I was a kid, I loved arcade machines and I loved hanging out in arcades, and I promised myself when I got my first house, I would get an arcade machine of my very own, which was a mind-blowing idea at the time, and that's what I did. As soon as I had my first house, I went to an arcade auction, found out how to buy them, brought one home, and then suddenly I had 20. This Twilight Zone machine is the first machine I ever bought, and then one day I got my first pinball machine, and I love those even more. It didn't work. It had 100 things wrong with it, which was typical of games in the auction back then. I learned how to fix machines on this game, actually. I love how they work and getting into them and fixing them and tweaking them, making them play better. This is a 1978 Gottlieb roller disco. One of the things that's really fun is you take an old, simple pinball machine from, let's say, the 1970s, which is very basic. One ball just has beeps and boops or chimes and no ramps or anything like that. And then we hot rod the game, so we powder coated a fun color and we put new LED lighting in it. And then sometimes I'll even add a modern music player and an amplifier system and additional lighting and lasers and whatever I can dream of. Now I'm trying to get more into it as a business because I've had lots of people asking me to get their machines fixed, or where can I buy one, or can you restore this old thing I have in the basement. There's a lot of demand for these machines, especially the older ones, and there's a lot of demand for people that can fix them, and there's a lot of broken ones out there. We're going to help people fix them all.
Pretty cool. That is our show for you tonight. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great weekend, and I'll see you back here on Monday. Have a great night.